Hey guys, and welcome back. We're going to be doing another movie review, and we're also going to be crocheting a little more of the scarf, trying to get it done. Okay, so today's movie, or not movie, actually today's show, is going to be Shadow and Bone. It's a 2021 film starring Jesse Bailey, Ben Barnes, Archie Renault, Freddie Carter, Amita Suman, Kit Young, and Danielle Galligan. There's a bunch more, but those are pretty much the main characters for now. So we enter in with our main character, Elena Starkov, who is in this kind of carriage thing with a bunch of other men on the way to their new location. We get from her that she is a map maker along with her entire unit, and that she kind of feels out of place, and just because she is part Shu. We later learned that the Shu people and the Ravka people do not agree, they're enemies, and she is a map maker for the first army of Ravka. So we get there, and things to be going pretty well, and all of a sudden she sees Mel, who is played by Archie, and he is really happy to see her, and we learned that they were both actually orphans at the same orphanage and pretty much best friends. We kind of sense a little bit of like tension between them, but nothing really happens with it. Throughout this time, like, we kind of learned that she is part Shu, and a lot of the people of Ravka really don't like that about her. They're really nasty to her and mean. She's even, when she's going to go get something to eat, they tell her to go to the back of the line. And so, she kind of storms off and pretty upset. I mean, pretty understandable. And so Mel ends up getting some food for her and bringing it to her. And they kind of have this like little moment where something might happen, but nothing quite happens. So then we pretty much learn about how, they were friends and they would hide away from people that were trying to hurt them in the orphanage and keep each other out of trouble. And they didn't want to be separated. So Elena's pretty happy that she's back reunited with Mel. They're both in this first army, and we learned that there's actually another type of people called the Gracia. And the Gracia are magical people. They can do all kinds of abilities. They can do fire, they can do air, and so much more. And so we get to find out that also a lot of this divide is because there's this huge thing called the Fold right in the middle of Ravka, where this this thick, penetrating, heavy darkness settles as like almost like an ink out. And we learn that within this darkness are like these gargoyle type flying things that like to eat people. So that's terrifying. And the reason that people don't go just like straight up around this fold to get to where they're going is because the Fredens of the north and the Shu to the south are actually enemies of the Ravka. And the Fredens do not like the Gracia, which the Ravkans do. And so there's a lot of controversy with that going on. And so the next day, the general pretty much gets up and he says that he selected some people to go with some of the Second Army to go across to pretty much meet up with sort of allies on the other side. So turns out Mel is one of those that's chosen, and Elena is really upset about this. She does not want to be separated from Mel when she just got back with him. And so she ends up burning some of the maps and gets away with that without anyone knowing. And the general sends her and her entire unit to go also on this boat with Mel and some of the Second Army to pretty much reconfigure out those maps so they can find out. So they start their journey. And I like to add too that this is on a boat, but it's on some kind of like stilts or pillars, and then they have one of the wind-blowing Grisha pushing the boat with the wind. So they're pushing, and they go into this darkness, and as before they're just about to hit this darkness, they're warned by an Inferni, who is a fire Grisha, that there should be no lights, no lanterns. There's a blue light that they're going to have on deck, but that's it. No other lights, or else they'll attract the monsters. As she's kind of explaining this, Mel is like very upset that Elena's on there, and he's pretty much threatening to drag her off the boat and dump her out there and say that she can't go because he does not want her in danger. He really cares about her. And it's too late. The wind blowing Grisha pushed the boat into the darkness, and this heavy, thick, thick darkness. And the tension is like very, very, very still as they're there. And everything seems to be going well. And they have these kind of markers as they go. So they pass a couple markers. And it just seems like they keep hearing these beasts, but the beasts don't hear them. Until one of the map makers that was along with Elena's unit gets, I guess, weirded out. And he turns on, he lights a lantern. And gets pretty much eaten up immediately by one of these flying gargoyle things. The lantern falls, explodes all over the deck, illuminating all the people on there, and it's pretty much just a free-for-all of all these monsters swarming and taking people off, and the Grisha are trying to do magic to fend them off, and nothing's really helping. It seems pretty hopeless. Mel's trying to fight them off to protect Elena. Elena ends up kind of saving him a little bit at the last second, but he gets badly wounded, and she's pretty much saying over him, you know, trying to like see him one last time, and he's telling her he'll meet her in the meadow. And right as he's like kind of saying this to her, we see another one of these monsters loom up right behind Elena through Mel's vision and grab her. And as the monster's grabbing her, her whole face goes like bioluminescent, and she radiates this like sonic blast that kills all these monsters. As this was all happening, before she did the sonic blast that killed the monsters, there was one person that actually jumped off the boat and ran and made it out of the fold without being hurt. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. So they make it out of the fold, and nobody really knows why that they survived, especially with how badly they were attacked. They pretty much just go to like a different port. And so, you know, they're treating Mel pretty much in this kind of crappy army hospital. I mean, they're doing pretty good, but they're not using any of the magical Grisha to just heal him right away, which is what they do for Elena, and they take her away. Then we kind of get a glimpse of our second set of characters. They're kind of like this shady organization of three. We have Jesper, who's kind of like the gun-toting, like super sharpshooter guy who's got like fun energy to him. And we have Inej, who's kind of like this secret ninja almost. She's like really quiet. She moves without sound. She keeps appearing and reappearing to people, and she's really good with knives. And then we have Kaz, who is their leader, and he's got like one of the best like bad guy, shady person faces I've ever seen on a person. It's fabulous. Anyway, so the three of them are looking for money, and they're trying to kind of get in on this deal that's happening, where there's pretty much 1 million Kruger up on the table if they can figure out how to steal, try to figure out how to get things done. And so what they are told to do is find this Heartrender. And so Heartrender, I guess, like calms somebody down, or they can stop their heart, or they can speed it up really fast and bring them back. They can do a lot. They're heart people. And so they need to find one of those. So we got this other shady guy that pretty much buys the entire business out. She's pretty much kind of like a working lady, this Heartrender. He hopes to kind of get her, but misses out because our three shady people end up swooping her up instead and bringing her to this other guy. And they pretty much meet and find the guy that had got out on foot from the ship, and they take him to the Heartrender, and the Heartrender makes him talk and tells all these shady people that there is a sun summoner, which is like the legendary thing that they kind of worship, and that's what saved them on board the ship. And so this really kind of the shady guy, he ends up killing that guy, and then telling Kaz and his crew of 2 that if they can figure out how to get the sun summoner back to him, then they will get 1 million Kruger. So first we have a motive of greed. So we kind of go through that and kind of leave it there. And so they're thinking that they need to figure out who this sun summoner is and how to get her. In the midst of this, we kind of learned that Inej is actually she was sold as a young kid to this like weird madame lady, and that Kaz has been doing all this shady stuff on the side to pay for her so that she can be a free lady and be with him and Jesper as one of the crew. He sees this $1 million Kruger deal as like the way to answer all those problems. So then we kind of pan back to Elena. And Elena is really confused at this point. She's brought to this tent where it's all dark, and this kind of like dark menacing general guy is there, and he's the General Kirgan, and he's got like the all black cape, all black clothes, slick black hair, pale skin. He looks like the classic bad guy. But anyway, he asks her like, who are you? And she says, I'm Elena, I'm a map maker, and she's really stressed out because she wants to be with Mel, who is hurt. She has not seen him since then. And so he walks up to her and pretty much cuts her arm, and this light comes out of her body, like this huge light, and it beams up through the tent and out into the space pretty much. And everyone's pretty much amazed that this happened. And then as it cuts away, it goes back to the group of seedy people that they get word that this lady, Elena Starkov, is actually the sun summoner, and they begin working on a way to get her. So they start arranging a way to find out who she is and how to get her. And they, anyway, meet up with a conductor guy to try to get to exactly the location that Elena is being transported to. Then we transport back to Elena, and she's pretty much thrown hostage into a carriage and taken away. And as she's being taken away, she sees Mel, and Mel kind of runs after her. She's screaming to get to him, and they're separated. She's taken to this place called the Little Palace, where the king and queen live, and also where the Grisha train. So at this point, she's just feeling like an outsider, and not really sure of herself. Everybody there is kind of like indifferent to her. They're not really sure what to expect because she is like just this highly regarded being of myth and legend that's now embodying in this person who's actually half Shu, who is half enemy. And so they don't really know what to do with that. And she feels really out of place. She's given this beautiful room, and she just feels like a bird trapped in a gilded cage. And she really just wants to get back to her friend Mel. This different kind of Gracia lady kind of comes in. Her name's Jenya, and she's called a tailor, which pretty much means that she fixes a little bit of cosmic imperfections on people. She can fix like cuts and all kinds of stuff. So she begins like writing letters to Mel and giving them to Jenya to pretty much deliver for her to try to invite him to this castle so she's not so alone. So it goes pretty well. She's pretty much tested by everybody. She has to go pretty much be tested and figure out why she's really there from this kind of lady that lives in this weird dark place called Bagra. And as this goes by, months go by and no word from Mel, and she feels really sad and out of place and just trying to find her way. All the while, pretty much other Grisha are making her feel bad for not instantly being the perfect sun summoner to get rid of the fold. Going so far as to embarrass her at dinner, saying that this many people have died just because she wants to sit there and eat figs, which is pretty harsh. So we cut back to our three kind of sketchy people. They end up finding a way to get hold of this guy called the conductor, who actually the person that's holding this kind of ownership over Inej had told her to go kill, and so she doesn't because Kaz is there to stop her, and they end up getting this conductor to take them across the way on this like rattle trap kind of train thing, and they make it somehow with Jesper's help fighting off the beasts and get closer to Elena. They include the conductor on this, making him the fourth member of their squad just for now. Their squad is to pretty much go kidnap Elena and take her back so that she can be used for whatever they need back in the city. And then they'll be paid 1,000,000 Kruger so that Kaz can pay all the way for Inej and she can be free. So this goes on and they're adventuring and going forward. Meanwhile, then it cuts to Mel. And Mel is trying his best to figure out a way to get to Elena. He pretty much almost deserts his army unit just to go get to her, and his friends tell him, no, don't do that, then you'll be a deserter and you'll be hunted. Even if you get to Elena, they'll never let you see her. The only way to see her is to be invited by doing something really noble. So he's pretty at loss for what to do until all of a sudden this picture of this beautiful stag with like antlers that form a circle practically, and it's all white, really tall, is shown to them and asked to be found. And so the First Army's pretty much whole idea on this is pretty fun. They're like mocking it and saying they're doing Second Army stuff and Grisha stuff. They got nothing better to do and they're not going to do it until Mel says that he is going to volunteer because he recognizes the drawing. It's a drawing that Elena has been drawing since she was a little girl. And so he saw that as like his sign to get back to her. So then we cut back to Elena, and Elena's really working hard. She's trying to find her way. Begra, who has been training her, is telling her that she shouldn't even come back because she doesn't even know where she wants. Elena's just feeling really lost. She's been trying to get a hold of Mel. No messages or anything. And she pretty much gets to the point where she's just like, fine, I'm gonna give up on Mel and move on with my life. At the same time as that's kind of going on, General Kiergan is kind of like showing her really special treatment. He's like taking her to where he would go walk for the boy and saying it's actually his line of family that brought aboard the fold in the first place and how he was made fun of as a boy about it. And that, you know, he's just feeling like her, like out of place just because he's so special. And because he's so special, he doesn't want to be like anybody else, and neither should she. And so that kind of inspires her to be like, yeah, I don't really need to be like everybody. You know, I'm going to be my own thing. And she just doesn't feel like she's really Grisha, but she gets kind of some pretty good confidence boost from everybody about that. Like, yeah, you've been Grisha your whole life, you just didn't know. And so she decides, you know what, forget Mel. I'm gonna just go my own way, and she actually gets this little scar removed on her hand, and we kind of get like a cut flashback of when Mel was like a kid and she was a kid in this orphanage, and he had gotten in trouble and ended up accidentally cutting his hand, and so they were actually gonna have Grisha come to the orphanage to test everybody to see if they were Grisha or not. And if they were Grisha, they get to go to the little palace and train to be Grisha. And if they weren't Grisha, then their lives would continue in the orphan. And because that Mel got hurt as a little kid, they couldn't test if he was Grisha or not, because apparently what they do is they hurt them, they give like a poke or something like that on their hand, and if they react anyway, then they can tell if they're Grisha or not. But since he'd already been hurt, they're just like, we're not even going to do it on you. And so Elena, while they were hiding from the headmistress or whatever she was, the lady in charge, cut herself on her hand too to match Mel, so that whatever the Grisha decide, if she's gonna be Grisha or not, couldn't tell either. So she never actually could find out if she was Grisha or not because she wanted to stay with Mel. That was her choice as a child. And so that little marking has been something she's been carrying with her this entire time. And she asks the tailor, Grania, to have it removed so she can essentially move forward with her life without needing anybody but herself. So she kind of takes on this new personality of, being strong, and she's letting herself kind of get more attached to General Kiergan. She's actually going to his rooms and talking with him and kind of, realizing that he's got this huge burden about fighting all these wars and, getting a little closer and all that. And they end up like having a kiss and everything. And he's just like really thrilled. He's really into her. She's starting to be really into him. And they seem really happy together. And at the same time, then it pans back to the three miscreants. I don't know why I keep calling them that, but that's kind of what they are. Anyway, Kaz and Jasper and Inesh, they find their conductor meet up with this heartrender named Nina to get her to pretty much make Elena go to sleep. Slow her heart down to where she goes to sleep so she's easier to kidnap. And when they get there, they find she's not there. And it turns out that a couple hours before, Nina was kidnapped by the Fiergens, who do not like Grisha at all. They think they're witches and they're evil, and they pretty much steal Grisha in the night to trial them and kill them in their homeland. And so she's taken off and away, and so they're kind of like out of that plan. And so they decide they're just going to kind of wing it and get in there somehow any way that they can. And they find this circus that's missing people that conveniently get hurt and have opening spaces for new acts. So Inej is actually really good at this like kind of like acrobatics thing, and then Jesper's got his gun thing. And so they're like, all right, you're all a part of it, let's go. And so then it pans over to Nina, who is the heartrender who got kidnapped, and she's being held on this ship, and she's being held by this guy named Matthias, who is kind of this like Viking looking brute dude. And he's offering her food, he's offering to kind of be nice to her, but at the same time he kind of like talks to her like crap because he doesn't trust her kind. She thinks he's evil. And so it goes from there. And then we kind of go back to Alina, who is starting to get even more feelings for General Kiergan, and she's starting to really come into her own power really well. She doesn't need like help from other little like gadget people that make gadgets to help her power along. She's got this. She's feeling really confident. And she even takes on this like clothing that matches General Kiergan's with this light. So like, they're kind of like this yin and yang color. And yeah, you kind of get this feeling like something's about to happen. And so then we pan over to Kaz and Jasper and Inej, who then enter into the palace to be performers, so they can get closer. And it's kind of this cat and mouse thing where they kind of get closer to her and then not so close, closer to her, not so close. And all the while, we have Mel, who is hunting in the forest with his two buddies that had to go with him to kind of support him. They end up getting attacked, and the two buddies end up getting murdered. And, Mel's just feeling so low, and he ends up running across the stag and its location. And so he goes back to the general and says, I have the location of the stag. I want to give it to them he's hurt. And they're like, no, you can't go. You're hurt. He's like, no, and I'm not telling you where it is. And so they decide to send him with some other guy, some random guy to kind of watch over him. And so he's on his way to the palace. Elena's having, this kind of like kissing relationship with General Kiergan that's kind of getting heavier by the day. And kind of as this is going on, Elena and General Kerrigan sneak off to go, have a moment, and they're about to kind of go all the way when there's a knock at the door and he gets called away on some kind of business. And pretty much right before all of that, one of the tailor had actually, Genya had actually changed the face of one of the other girls to make it look just like Elena. So there it looked like there was two sun summoners there to where everybody can kind of see and interact with her. She was just kind of playing. And as this decoy sun summoner came into the dressing room to, brush her hair and kind of get, prettied up again to go back out there, the conductor comes in and kills her. And it's just really sad because the tailor comes in and kills the conductor, and then gets to this poor girl, and she's like, change my face back so I don't die with the wrong face. It's just so sad. And so this news gets back to General Kerrigan that the decoy's been killed and that somebody's out to go get Elena, and that they don't know if they have accomplices or what, because the whole palace at this point is filled with people for this festival. So yeah, they kind of have this cat and mouse game where, Kaz finds Elena, but then she slips away. Inez finds Elena and she slips away. They kind of get into a little bit of tumble from a couple of the Grisha who notice them. And it's just ongoing. And Elena, is told to wait in General Kerrigan's room for him because he's going to be back and they're going to, go all the way or whatever. And the door closes and she's just kind of feeling nervous, but I guess ready to take that next step. And all of a sudden the secret door opens and Bagra comes in. She's like, come on, let's get you out of here. You'll be a captive forever. And so she's like weirded out, but she trusts Bagra because Bagra's her teacher. And so she goes with Bagra through these secret tunnels, and Bagra pretty much informs her that General Kerrigan is not who he said he is. He's actually the heretic general that brought the fold forth hundreds of years ago, and that he's eternal, and that he's had hundreds of years to learn how to seduce young girls and make them do what he wants. And he's very sly and very evil, and he just wants to use her power to make more things more evil. And Elena's like questioning Bagra, like, what are you talking about? This is so weird. And then Bagra reveals that she is actually General Kerrigan's mother, and that their kind, the darkness summoners and the sun summoners, are eternal. And so she's been alive for a very long time. Her son's been alive for a very long time. And that Elena herself will be alive for a very long time. And so she tells Elena that her son's just going to use her and that she needs to escape because not only will it hurt Elena, but it'll hurt everybody because he's ruthless. He just wants to control everything. He's just this terrible guy. And so, she tells her to go down these dark, dank tunnels and go, when it gets to the fort, go right because there's food and other Grisha there to protect her, and not go left. Well, Elena goes down the tunnels by herself and doesn't go the way she's supposed to. She goes the other way and, puts on a hood and sneaks out the front. She's done with Kerrigan at this point. She can't believe how awful he is. She just wants to escape. And so we have Jesper the whole time that Kaz and Inej and the conductor are all in the palace doing their own thing, trying to locate Elena, just waiting kind of by the carriage. And he has this like little fling with like one of the stable boys and, does whatever. He's like a very relaxed comedy relief character. I think he's a lot of fun. But anyway, he's just kind of like hanging out by this carriage, and then he sees Elena like sneaking in a robe all around and go right up to their carriage, gets in this like trunk thing and closes it. And he's like, like, what? He doesn't say anything. And then all of a sudden, Inej and Kaz come out and they're like, it's a loss. We couldn't get her. The conductor was apparently working for someone else because he killed some decoy. It's this buzz all around. We gotta get out of here. And so Jesper's kind of like, guess where she is. Guess what I have, And so, he's just kind of giddy, but he doesn't give it away because he doesn't want her to hear. So they get out of there. and pretty much General Keegan comes back and finds that Elena's gone, and he's like wigged out, getting really, really upset, asking where everything is, where she is. She have everybody go find her. She must be kidnapped. And I want to say too, I forgot to mention that Mel had finally made his way to the castle before this point, before he could even see Elena, and he was shown to a room and talked to the general, and the general pretty much told him he needs to tell him where this magical stag is. But Mel said he wouldn't tell anybody until he saw Elena, and he was pretty much told to wait in a room. So he's been kind of like lurking around the castle too, but he didn't run across Elena yet. So anyway, the general says he wants to find this tracker, which is Mel, who's a really good tracker, and finds out that he's disappeared. And then he wants to find Elena, who's also disappeared. And he wants to find the people that assassinated the decoy, which they found the conductor guy that killed, but then they think there's a couple others involved too, and they've also disappeared. So he's like really upset at this point. And then we pan over to our dynamic trio, and they open the trunk, and they pretty much tell her, Elena, that she's coming with us, and she does some sun power stuff because she's actually kind of coming into her own. And they're like, oh, okay, you can go, I guess, because they don't have any way to force such a powerful being like her to do anything. She disappears in the crowd, and she's trying to like play it cool and buy food, and she still have shoes, so everyone's like super awful to her. And she then all of a sudden gets kind of like accosted. People like try to like hurt her and go do something with her, and she defends herself. She fights back, and then she has the guard called on her, and she's running away. She's running through all this crazy little alleyways, and just really stressful. And she makes her way to the ends of the village and falls down this like ravine and hiding. And then all of a sudden she's kind of told to like, shh, be quiet. And she turns around, and it's Mel. Mel had tracked her, the greatest tracker, I guess, in their first army or whatever. And so, they're reunited. They're really happy. And anyway, and then we have the Dark General, who's like looking for everybody, trying to find answers. And he's pretty much totally convinced that Elena's been kidnapped and not that she ran away. We have the three trio who are kind of trying to find everybody, but it's been really tough for them because they lost Elena, and so they're trying to find a way to get Elena back without having her, sunbeam them. So then we pan back over to kind of like this sub character, Nina, who's the Heartrender. She's still on the ship being transported to Fjorden to be awaited trial. And she gets a little closer to Mateus, and they kind of have this like dark chemistry where they kind of like each other, but they're enemies as well. And Mateus is pretty much told, their ship started taking a lot of water, and he's pretty much told to kill all the prisoners if they start going over, because better to have them dead than to have them possibly escape. And he's like, no, well, they need to go to trial. That's how we do things. And the captain pretty much tells him to grow up. And so their ship capsizes, and Mateus is like Titanicing. Mateus is holding on to this door, trying to survive. And Nina, who's like a Heartrender, keeps him warm, and they strike a deal. She'll keep his heart going and keep him warm with her magic if he can swim and push the boat, because she doesn't know how to swim. The door. And so they make it to the end, and they don't know where they are, and they have to seek refuge in this whaler's hut. And things get kind of steamy pretty quickly. He's not really sure about her. He seems pretty off-put because she's a little more worldly and speaks a little more worldly, and he doesn't. And so they kind of get this like good chemistry and kind of starting to feel each other up, and kind of goes from there. Anyway, then it goes back to Elena and Mel, and they decide that they're going to go find this, majestic, legendary stag before General Kiergan gets it. Because according to the old books, that some of these magical creatures from the original Grisha who used like the bone man. He used his finger bones and whatever bones he had to make these creatures with these incredible abilities. And it says in the book that if you kill the creature, then it becomes it like upgrades your magic or whatever, like 10 to 100 fold or something like that. And so they decide that they have to go kill this stag first before this evil general who brought the crazy fold over and expands the fold and kills the entire world. So they're looking for it. The general starts to realize that she's not being kidnapped. She's actually running with the tracker now, and that they are headed into the forest and on their way to find the stag. So he's like kind of getting a little more devious at this point. He was kind of like acting like a good guy through most of it, but now he's starting to show his true colors. And so we have Inej, which says that she's going to run away because she's so far enough away from that headmistress lady that she doesn't want to, the madame lady, she doesn't want to like become sucked back into that. She would rather just be free. And so Kaz says, he needs her, he can't live without her, that she's his everything, and that she will never go back to that madame place. He says there's no way. And so at the very beginning of the show, we see that he actually signs his business as collateral to the madame lady just in case that they never return. So that would allow Inej to leave with him to try to make this million Kruger. So in order for him to do that, if he were to make this million Kruger, then he would free her. If he gives up everything he's worked for in this business that he has, then it would free her. So he cares about her so deeply that he would do that, and she doesn't know that he put this other thing on collateral for her, and doesn't put that out there to Inej, and pretty much tells her, stay with him, please. Like, he promises that she will never have to go back to that madame as long as she trusts him. And he just is kind of like this dark guy. Like, he's just got this like brooding cloud about him and this sour frown, and he also has this limp where it seems like it's really painful for him to do anything, but he really does care for Inej, and I think that there is something going on there slowly. And so he just tells her that we got to keep trying and gotta keep trying to find Elena. So at this point, it goes back to Elena and Mel, and they find the stag, and they're about to kill it. They have to have Elena kill it in order to absorb its power. And just as they're about to kill it, she lowers her bow, and Mel's like, whoa, what are you doing? This is like the whole point we're here. And she's like, no, hold on. And she goes up to the stag, and she touches it on its nose, and this beautiful light pulls around them in this beautiful bubble as like this transfer of energy and just power. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the stag is wounded and hurt, and so is Mel, trying to defend Elena from this unseen force. Turns out it's General Kiergan and his like crew of me and Grisha. And so Mel fights the best he can, and the stag is lying there hurt, and Elena makes this like force field of light around them. And she's like, why are you doing this? You're so evil. And General Kiergan is like, well, I need this power and I'll get it any way I want. He's just being like kind of an evil bad guy right now. And so Elena, is not sure what to do. Mel is pretty much dying. The stag is dying. And so General Kiergan says, because he can't get through her force field, he's like, if you lower your force field, I will have my personal healer right here heal Mel, and he will live if you do this. And so she chooses Mel instead of the power. And so General Kiergan instantly kills the stag and harvests its horns, and has his healer pretty much heal Mel and then knock him out. They start punching him out. Like, it's pretty... It's shady. Like, I don't know why he thinks he's gonna be such a good guy when he does all that mean stuff to her friend. So then it kind of goes to them being taken to this other campsite, and then we have Kiergan and Mel kind of talking. Mel's all chained up. He's looking rough. He's not dying anymore, but he's not looking great anymore either. He's not allowed to go around Elena. And Kiergan says, pretty much has this long speech that, you can be as mad at me as you want. You can think you're going to have all this revenge on me. And even Elena might not even like me right now, but me and Elena are immortal. We're going to live forever. And if she doesn't accept me today, tomorrow, a year from now, 50 years from now, doesn't matter. She'll eventually accept me and we'll be one. And he's like, I don't have to kill you. I just have to outlive you. And so by the time you're an old, graying old man, she may start to accept me and will be the most powerful force in the entire world. It's this huge, just neener like speech that he has for Mel. And so, Mel's like, you're going to wish that you killed me because I'm going to get you back, and leaves him. And so then, of course, Dr. Bad Guy, General Kiergan, goes and visits Elena. And Elena's like mad. She wants to see Mel. She tells General Kiergan she knows who she is, that he's the heretic that caused the fold, and he's actually the bad guy, and he isn't this good guy, and how that he's been lying to her. And he's like, well, what lies? I haven't been telling you any lies, and she's like, well, yeah, you said that you were a descendant of this heretic, not that you were him, and that you're going to use me to make those powers amplified and maybe do all this terrible stuff. And she's just feeling really hurt, and especially since she was so close to this general guy. He just totally duped her, and upset for her friend, and she's really worried about Mel. And so Kiergan has this it's actually really pretty delicate horn necklace thing, and he has one of his minions put it over her on her neck, and then put a coin on top of his hand. And then the minion guy, he does this kind of magic where it melds the bone necklace into her skin, where only a couple of the horns are poking out, and she can't get it off. And then it melds the coin that was on top of Kiergan's hand into his skin deeply, and it makes it to where Kiergan can use all of Elena's powers and she can't use them. She could barely use them. She's used a 10% of it, and he can use all of it plus his own. And he pretty much tells her that they're going to be so powerful together, and they're just that there's nothing more equal in this world than them now. They're bound, and and he gets 100% of her power. And it's just it's really oh, we're equals, but I get all this power and you don't. It's just kind of icky. And so while this is going on, Mel, ends up escaping, gets out, gets away. And so, because he can't go against the black general right now. And we also have our trio of three who are, also still trying to sort of get Elena as a last ditch effort. And they find her going on this boat back to meet up with this enemy clan. And so she gets on the boat. She's dressed to impress, but she's also chained, to the boat. And Kiergan, is pretty much just, a rooster. He's just so happy with himself, the cat that got the canary. And we have our trio of three underneath the boat stowing. And then, actually, no, they didn't stow. They bought tickets, but they went down there as soon as they went into the fold. And then we have Mel, who was actually the stowaway. And he's waiting for any opportunity to kill the Dark General. They pretty much full circle interact with each other and figure out that they actually have a common enemy and that they're going to take on Mel as part of the crew. So right before this kind of all goes down, Nina, who is getting really close to Mateus, decide that they were thinking about running away together and being together. And we find out that she is actually a spy for General Kiergan, and that she was going to spy on the trio that are on the bottom of the boat, but she, got kidnapped and swept away, and that she's just going to leave that life and go live some life in some other country with Mateus. They want a future, they're in love, and as she's eating with him in the tavern, General Kiergan's henchmen come and tell her that, she needs to make a choice. She needs to, turn this evil witch hunter in so that they can, persecute him And she's in love with him. And she's like, no, he's changed. Like, we're in love. He's changed. He's not like that anymore. And they don't believe her. They think that she's just going to be a traitor. And as this was going on before, she was like hearing that they were looking for some slavers or whatever at the bar. Like, they are offering a big reward money. And so she tells the guy, oh, this is the slaver right here, and points to Matthias, just so he can get out of it. So you got the humans and the Grisha all up against each other, and the Grisha end up backing down because they don't want any war with this side. And so Matthias is taken off as a prisoner of these guys that are looking for slavers, and Nina is following, which then Matthias thinks that Nina betrayed him all along just so that he could be a captive, and denies her love. And she pretty much learns that he's going to be in jail for a very long time. And she tells him, no, well, you were going to be dead though. I saved your life. And he's like, pretty much spits on that, like, what life was it going to be that he was going to have than be in jail. And so she's feeling really lost as she starts traveling on this boat. And so then we go back to the boat that's going through the fold. We have General Kerrigan, who's using Nina's power to make this kind of wormhole through the fold, the safe wormhole. And on this boat is all the delegates from the different nations, watching this happen. They got the Sun Summoner and the Darkness Summoner there. And then we have Mel and Kaz and Inej and Jesper down there, who are going to take out the Black General as soon as they can. And so as soon as they kind of getting to the end of their journey on this boat, they kind of stop. And as you see on the harbor, we hear that the kind of enemy side is going to actually kill everybody on the boat, including the Sun Summoner. They want this fold here because it brings them independence, and they just want blood, pretty much. And so General Kerrigan ends up pushing the fold with Elena's power all over that whole town and just wiping it out. And one of the Grisha that's on the boat, who's kind of had holding a candle out for General Kerrigan, pretty much turns on him then because he killed her entire family that lives in that town, which is why she wanted to go. And she's just feeling really hurt up there. And then all of a sudden, Kerrigan turns around with this big speech that he controls the fold and all its monsters, and him and Elena are going to be, the king, queen of the world, and there's no need for war anymore. You have to answer to me. You have to get my permission for everything. I mean, just this like holier than thou overlord speech. And pretty much right then, that's when Mel decides to pop out and try to kill Kerrigan. Kerrigan retaliates. There's this big battle. Inej up there attacking people. She's kind of going down, and then one of the Grisha that had her whole village destroyed, helps Inej out, and they decide to team up as well. And Kerrigan uses Lena's power to pull back her light so that half the boat where everybody's fighting is now enshrouded in darkness and able for monsters to come and try to take them off. And he's like just saying, it's just me and you now, Elena. Everybody's gone. It's just us. It's always going to be just us. And he lifts his hand up. He's like, we've always needed each other. And Elena's like, yeah, well, that's true. You've always needed me, but I never needed you. Turns out one of Inej's knives had been ricocheting over to her that she grabbed in secret, and she goes and she slices his hand off the top and cuts the coin from his hand. And using just the power of the stag, she's pretty much, makes this big solar dome around everything and protecting those all on the boat from all these evil gargoyles. And he's like asking her, like, how do you have the power of the stag, when I killed the stag? And she's like, you're so stupid, because that's not how you get its power. It has to choose you. And that moment when she put her hand on the stag, it gave her the power to, give her that big radiance. And so that horn necklace that she was wearing on her collarbone that had sunk into her skin then sinks all the way into her skin. And she is just ultra powerful now. Mel gets up, even though he's injured, and pushes General Kiergan off the boat, protecting Elena because Kiergan is now trying to hurt Elena. And it's just really dramatic. They're fighting down there, and all of our other characters are fighting. And Kiergan starts using some tricky maneuvers to try to hurt Mel, and Mel ends up shooting Kiergan, bringing attention to the beast, which the beast go and start trying to attack Kiergan, and we just kind of assume he gets killed by the beast at this point. Mel gets back on board, and he's safe with Elena's bubble, and Elena pushes them out of the fold. Or the other Grisha pushes them out of the fold with Elena protecting the entire ship. So then we have all of our characters now, except for Nina, sitting by the fire, talking, and then Jez, who's like kind of this spiritual religious person, is just saying that, you know, she's always believed in the Sun Summoner, and she'll always have her help if she ever needs it. So the three of them decide to go their own way, as well as the lone Grisha. She decides that she's going to go try to find her family, do whatever she can. And Mel and Elena are going to start over somewhere else. And Elena says that she has to get rid of the fold. She's just not ready. And that, Mel says that it doesn't matter. He'll help her any way he can. As long as they have each other, they'll be okay. So they all get on this second boat to go somewhere else to a new life. And we have Nina, who just arrives pretty much to get on this other boat to get away. And so we have all of our characters together now. And she hears the three, Jesper, Kaz, and Inej, talking about how they need a Heartrender to complete this next mission. And she hears that and she volunteers. And then we kind of hear other ship people talking about how some Sunrunner's dead and there's no hope now and that they need to move on. And then we see Elena and Mel, who are in disguise, enter the boat together to go somewhere new to kind of train in secret. And they're pretty much just saying that, they're going to get rid of the fold when Elena's ready. And as long as, the Darkling, they keep calling him the Darkling is gone, there's nothing more worse that could happen. And just as they're saying that, kind of predictable ending, but cool at the least, we get a view of the fate as we go in, and as we're like kind of having this like aerial shot, we see this lone character come out, and it's General Kieran, and he's looking pretty rough, but then he turns back to the void and he says, "Come," and these beasts start manifesting out of the void into the real world and following him. And that's the end of the series. I really like this series. I wasn't expecting to, not because like I've seen commercials or anything for it and didn't think so, just because it was so random. And I assume this has books with it too, which I am definitely going to start reading next. I think the storytelling was really good. I felt a good connection with all of the characters. I thought that each of them were unique. I thought they all had pretty good arcs. I liked the twists in it. Some of them were predictable, but altogether, I think it was a really, really good story and well done and well acted out too. I definitely would say give this one a go. I wouldn't say it's like kid friendly at all because there are a lot of shooting and death, but I say it's a really good one to snuggle up with somebody and watch, or crochet too if you want to learn and enjoy. But yes, I give it an approval to give it a go. I think it was a good story, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm gonna start trying to find out where I can get my hands on the book and to compare it. So maybe I'll do another review once I've read the book. There's a book. I'm pretty sure there's a book. For how in-depth that story was, there has to be a book. And compare where maybe things are different. So if you like this review, please give me a like and a subscribe. If you have any different shows that you would like me to review and crochet to, I'm very open. I like all kinds of things. So, thank you guys. And until next time.